Hi, this is Isabel Litzler from Pleiad HC, and today I'm doing the webinar on women back to work. So I hope many of you can join. If you're looking for work right now, if you're in career transition, this webinar is for you. I will be doing questions and answers in between the different sections that I will cover. So if you click on the Rubik's Cube, you will be able to ask your question, and I will answer it as you're going. So that's going to be Q&A again, and I will see the question pop up and respond immediately. So the topics I want to cover today, this is a webinar for women, so it's really for you to understand a little bit the situation about women in Switzerland. I will also talk about what I call limiting beliefs. I don't know if you've heard of this expression, but it's something that I think is limiting women at the moment. And finally, I think what most of you are looking for is what are some of the perspectives, the opportunities to look for a job in Switzerland. So I will cover that towards the end. So the first thing I want to cover is really the situation about women in Switzerland. That's important so that you understand a little bit what's going on in the country, especially if most of you are expats here. So the first thing to understand is really the environment. So I've done a little bit of research, and it's coming from Bilan magazine. It's a magazine you can buy in the kiosk. It's on economical issues. I also advise PME magazine. It's also giving you a lot of resources. And some of the figures that I found were quite interesting. And the first one is really what you've probably experienced is the cost of childcare. So what's really interesting is that in Switzerland, it's 41% of salary compared to 18% in other European countries. So that in itself is an issue. Also, the length of maternity cover is smaller in Switzerland than in other countries. Another thing also is about women working in Switzerland. There's this idea that women stop working once they have a child, and actually the statistics I found were saying the opposite. 70% of women work in Switzerland, which is higher than other European countries, and that's also based on an article I read. So basically the situation right now is that there's still some issues, but the idea is that women want to work, they want to be part of the economy. The big one is also salary issues. So when men are making a certain amount of money, we're still seeing that women are 18.4% on average earning less than men. So that's still quite a gap. Again, I'm not going to make that Swiss focus because I think it's a worldwide issue where women are not still at the same wage as men, and it's actually discussed in many environments, many countries. So I won't make that a Swiss issue, but it's a women issue. The other issue as well is women represented in higher senior level positions, especially in the public sector. So there's some statistics also showing that women are still not part of the administration in companies. They're not part of senior level management still. So we find that there's still a lot of work to do. Same thing with entrepreneurship. The figures I found were quite interesting as well, and it's the Fédération des Entreprises Romandes, which I belong to, in the May 2016 issue. Some of the figures were 7 women only led startup out of 67 men-led startup, and that's in the life science sector that they chose as the example. Only 10% of scholarships go to women, and that's still for startups. And finally, only 3% of women are business angels. So you can find that in the startup sector, there's still a gap there. Women are not going for it. So where is this coming from? And that's where I will make the transition more towards the reasons for this. So as I said, there's some economical issues and political issues where women are not necessarily given the chance, and there's also the coverage, for example, when you're out on maternity, and then the childcare and all that, that's one thing, but there's other issues, and I will go to that in a minute. So my belief of why women stagnate in career is that there's basically 2 things. There's concrete barriers, and that would be, for example, if you can't find appropriate childcare, or if your company maybe is not friendly for work-life balance, for example, and not entitling you to having a part-time type of situation. So I call that, the environment, and you can't do much about that. yes, of course, you can, in the votation, if you have the right to vote, you can make some decisions to help change the environment, but that's going to take a long time still. And there's other things which I find that women can control, and this is more working with yourself, and that's where it starts. It's really working with the individual. So I think the first thing is really your mental and physical well-being. So that's what you can control. So I will focus more on what can you do today to improve your personal situation. So the mental and physical well-being for me is the first thing. If you're not feeling good about who you are and what you look like, also that's something with women, with a lot of women, that's not going to help you with your career in general or with anything. So it's really working on those two issues there, being happy with who you are and your well-being, and also making your own choices. So I still hear women say, you know, I need to check with my husband, or I need to check with my boss. I know I've worked in corporate jobs where I know I depended quite a bit on opinions from my superiors, which sometimes were men, sometimes women, but we tend to look for some type of approval somewhere, whether it's family, friends, you know, other colleagues, you know, superiors. We are looking for this acceptance somewhere else than within ourselves. So that's an issue. The other issue, which I discussed in a minute ago, was the belief system. I think as women, we grow up with thinking we're faulty in some way. So, and that's coming from a childhood where we grow up, you know, already with, as if, you know, we need to find something that's going to fill us. So whether that's the perfect job or the perfect husband or the perfect opportunity. So we're looking again for that external thing to complete us, as opposed to working on ourselves and what makes us happy. So that's another issue, is the self-belief. The other thing you can work on is the people you connect with. You've probably heard the saying, you represent, you know, the people that you spend the most time with. So if you're surrounded by people that are quite negative, that keep telling you that it's too hard or you won't make it happen, that's not going to help. So you need to surround yourself with positive people. So look at, who are you spending the most time with right now? Are these people really helping you achieve your long-term objectives? You know, are they the right people for you in your life right now? And the last thing is really to increase your learning potential. So we can learn throughout our lives, and I hear people say, well, I'm too old, it's too late, etc. It's never too late to learn. You can always register in college, you know, even when you're retired. So I think it's really that belief that, you know, we have something that's wrong. And I think that's my main message, is that we grow up, and that's very feminine, I think, thinking that there's always something wrong. You know, we're not good enough, we're too old, we have too many issues, etc. So we are never ready for taking on what we really want. And that's a problem. I think men tend to be a bit better at this. When they want something, they tend to be very focused on goals and achieve them. I think with women, it's a little bit more difficult, because we always get swayed by other things. So at some point it's going to be, and I've seen that with my clients, where they said, well, you know, when I met my husband, you know, next thing I know, I had kids, and then we moved to a place. And when I was listening to them, it's almost like they weren't actor of their own lives. They were driven away by some external thing that basically took the leadership for them. So they lost that power. And that's why I think it's always important to say, what do you want? And make sure that whatever comes from the outside fits that as well. And it's not going to take you away from your true objectives and goals. So my last thing on that part, on why women stagnate, I think it's really to go for what you want. It's very important to decide what you want, and that's the first phase I work on when I do career coaching. It's really working on the piece, what are you looking for, what do you want? And then we can build a project and a plan around what are you going to do concretely to achieve that. But if you don't have the part on what you want, it's going to be very difficult. So that's the number one thing you need to work on. There's different videos that I post in my Facebook page. I try to give some encouragement for women to see that other leaders have done it. And that's also what we need. We need more, we need to see more women in leadership roles that can show us the way, because we don't have a history. Men have been having models throughout history that they can look up to and say, okay, you know, I like this politician or this author or this businessman. But for women, it's still very recent. All the models that we can look at Maybe there've been women in power for the last 20 years or so, but it's very hard to find examples prior to that. So there's a gap also in having more role models. So that's something that we need to find, is more role models. The other thing that women need to reconcile with is really understanding that it's important to understand that we're still in a man-led type of world. So we try to fit in some ways, but we need to also understand that we have a lot of competencies and strength that we can bring to the table. And that's also part of what I see with women that have been outside of work and they've been at home, maybe taking care of the family. Society tends to look up to people who make money, who drive a career, are very successful. So when you're a woman, when you choose to stay at home with your children, sometimes it's also the stigma of saying, I'm not doing enough. So that's another thing that we need to work on, is where are you bringing your value and when are you finding value for yourself? So there's, as I said, it's not one particular issue of why women are not growing in their career. It's multiple issues. It's social, it's economical, and it's very much also internal. It's how we value ourselves and what we bring into the table as a woman. So now I want to move forward, but before I move forward, I just want to see if there's any questions on that, on why I think women stagnate. I don't see any questions, so I'll move to the limiting beliefs, because I think that's important, is why do we have limiting beliefs in the fact that we can't achieve something? So for me, self-esteem is number one, and it's something that we need to tackle on as much as we can. When you're, for example, in a situation right now, what can you do to improve your self-esteem? I think many changes have happened in the world where we're still not at the stage where we feel comfortable with ourselves. So some of the things that are going on in our heads, for example, negative thinking is, I'm not good enough, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I don't have the education. And this is not something I'm inventing, it's what I hear from my clients or from women in general. So I'm not good enough, I don't have the right experience, I don't know anything about this field. So it's always starting with the missing points and not the strength. And that's, I would say, for pretty much every woman. It's always starting with what I don't have rather than what I have. So that's what I call the negative thinking or the limiting beliefs, because we are limiting ourselves first. So the I'm not good enough, if I take just a few examples to show you how it's affecting your positioning, for example, if you're looking for a new career or to go back to work, I'm not good enough means I don't have the skills, the experience to take this job, for example. So that's going to already put you in a situation where the person is going to say, well, this person is not sure of herself. She's not valuing what she has. And maybe you have other skills you can bring to the table. Maybe you can go and find the diploma. If you look at most successful people in the world, they don't even have a high school education for most of them. They just started something and they found their audience, or their business grew, and next thing you know, they became very successful. Again, this is something, I'm not going to make that a general thing, go out of school and you'll be successful. I think it's still very much very specific. High potential people that just made a business and became successful. But I would say in general, even if you don't have the highest education, you can, if you're the type of person who can understand people, understand how the world works, you can do pretty well for yourself. So again, the not having education, I think, is still part of our negative thinking. Then the physical aspects, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too this, too that. That's actually this negative thinking that's going to prevent you from being successful in your interviews, for example. So when you go in there, you need to feel extremely confident. I was just talking to someone who does recruitment yesterday, and he was saying when someone walks into the room, I can already in the first 30 seconds, usually, if you're going to hire this person or not. That's someone who works with a lot of recruiters. So, and that's coming, if you hear it from different people, that's actually a reality, is that decisions are made pretty quickly. So if you come into a room and you're not owning who you are as a person, it's going to show quite rapidly, and they won't even look at your resume. So owning who you are as a person, you have a certain background, you look whatever you look like, that's how you are. So you just need to accept it and make the most out of it, and you can use that actually as a strength in your interviews. The other limiting belief I hear is I don't have the resources, whether that be money, connections, support in general. So therefore, that's why I'm not finding the position, the opportunity, or what have you. You will always miss something. I mean, I rarely met someone that had everything lined up at the right time to be successful. If you look at the biggest entrepreneurs, probably some of them didn't have any money or didn't have connections. I've rarely seen a success story when someone said, yeah, I had all the right connections knock on my door and they gave me a lot of money to do my business. So it's usually people that become successful because they're able actually to grow from their learnings and they're able to make the most out of it. So for example, if right now you're saying, well, we don't have a lot of income and I don't know if it's the right time, maybe in 5 years you have the income, but you're stuck with other things, it's never going to be the right time. So at some point you need to say, what do I want now? And what am I willing to put as an effort to get it? So that's going to be very important, is not to let the limiting beliefs of not having enough resources get you stuck. So for example, when I started, I didn't have any resources. But as things were moving forward, I started having resources that made themselves available. So it's also that you need to prove yourself, I think is the way to put it. For example, if you're in a family that maybe could help you, but right now they're not willing. Why? Because maybe they think you're not serious about it or you're not willing to put in the work. But if you show your husband, wife, or your family that you have the potential, then maybe after a while they say, you know what, focus on your business and I'll support you. Or for example, if you're willing to attract certain partners for your business, when you start, it's the same thing. Basically, when you start from scratch, you're not going to be credible, let's put it that way. You're just someone else out in the group that's trying to start a business, and there's people trying to start businesses every day. So why would you have credibility? You need to put in the time. But if after 6 months, people around you in general, whether it's family again or external people, when they see, this business is really starting to buzz and they actually have people that are interested in what they do, so maybe what they do is actually important. And then you get the resources at that stage. All of a sudden, people want to partner with you. All of a sudden, clients want to buy your services. So it's something you need to earn. And I think that's a big message also in this webinar, is that if you want to, whether it's start a business or find a job, you need to go with the mindset where you need to earn it. Because a lot of people right now want similar things. And it's not even a question about being a man or a woman. It's about being the best in what you do. That's what's going to get you the opportunity. So if you have a skill, doesn't matter what you look like, what background you have, if you have a skill and you know that you're doing good work and you're very talented in your area, then you should go for it. Just nobody at any point in time is going to find you where you live and offer you the opportunity. So it's up to you to actually go forward and say, I want this opportunity. It's very important for me and I want to go for it. So that's my message, is that don't let resources, issues, family members, friends, anyone tell you that you're not capable of doing something. I think if you think that you have the talent for it, you should go for it. So yeah, that's the point of limiting beliefs. So how you're going to say, how do I go about changing the limiting beliefs to positive? Let's say right now I'm not really feeling confident and it's limiting me. I would say it's a journey. It's basically you have to change the negative thinking into the positive. So it's exercises that you need to do with yourself where you give yourself some objectives and you start changing slowly your mindset. That's something that's going to take time, but it is possible. And you see that once you do it, it's a little bit like changing anything else. If you want to lose weight or what have you, at the beginning, it's a bit tough. But then after a while, you realize your mind is going to really see the positive as opposed to the negative. So it works. I've tested it. It really works. Once you start telling yourself positive stories, positive things start to happen. So that's why the mindset is central, the mindset in what you want to achieve in your life. So I wanted to give you a few resources right now, also on changing the mindset and thinking positive. But before that, same thing, I want to see if you have questions. I'm looking on the screen. I don't see any questions yet. So I have some few questions I've prepared for you as well that might help you. So how do you change the limiting beliefs besides telling yourself, some positive? I think the first thing is really to start learning some things. So there's a lot of MOOCs. You may have heard, they're online classes, and I can give you the resource for that. It's basically free online courses you can take in different areas. So for example, if you think, well, I really like marketing, but I really don't know anything about it, you don't need necessarily to go for a master's in marketing. Now there's enough classes online for free where you can get the basics. And I'm not saying that's going to be enough to be credible for a job in marketing, but it's going to, first of all, it's going to make you feel like you know more about the topic that you like. And it's going to empower you to feel that now you're ready to learn more about marketing and it's something that you really enjoy. Because one of the things that I notice mainly with my clients or people in general is that they tend to jump too quickly into a career that they don't actually embrace and enjoy fully. So it's usually, well, I've been doing this for a while and I think I look for work in the same areas. It's very important to take that step back and say, what do I really enjoy doing? So by doing some online courses, you're not really investing a lot of money, you're doing them for free, and it's allowing you to test what you really enjoy as far as content. So maybe you take the online courses and you realize, you know what, I didn't know marketing was so much into research and figures, and actually I don't really like it. And you've just saved yourself money because you haven't spent money towards a master's in that. Or maybe you take finance courses and you realize, I don't really like finance after all. I'm not going to pursue that. So I think there's lots of ways where you can test what you like without necessarily investing a huge amount of money, and therefore find in the end what you really, really enjoy and then invest in that. So it's really a step-by-step. So basically the other thing is that you notice that when you take a step back in your life, you usually have a lot more possibilities that come clear to you. So that's what I do in the skills assessment. I try to have people think about what they really enjoy. So basically what I do with my work is that I have people think about what they really enjoy. So I do this with two different types of services. The first one is the online career planning, where people can do this skills assessment, where they really see what it is that they enjoy, what have they done. First of all, I think you need to have that reflection of what you've done in the past and then project yourself in the future. People usually tend to project themselves in the future and make the similar mistakes because they haven't taken the time to reflect. So the skills assessment really helps with the reflection on what things you like, what things you don't like, what's your next typical career step. And then once you have that figured out, you can build your project and find a job. So for me, there's really an order of things, and that's what I encourage in the skills assessment. I also do one-on-one sessions to prepare yourself for interviews, to work on maybe your market potential. So that's more on-demand services. So these are the two areas that I focus on. And the result of that is people can find a job quicker. So as opposed to spending 6 months or a year, going around in circles where you never hear back and you keep applying, you never hear back, you've wasted 6 months of your life. So the idea is that quickly we can find out what's your situation, what do you need to help you move at a faster rate. So in a nutshell, basically that's what I offer at Pléiades HC. So resources, again, will come to you once you figure out what it is that you want and you're very clear on your potential. That's the first thing, and what's available out there. And then after that, everything goes quite fast. The other thing that I wanted to cover besides limiting belief is self-empowerment, because I think only you can give yourself the power to move forward in your career. So I wanted to give you a few tips, basically, because you're going to say, well, so how do I work on my self-empowerment? What does it mean typically? So self-empowerment is basically, again, the ability to find the resources within yourself. So you're going to say, well, what kind of resources do I have? Trust me, you have a lot of resources within yourself. But the first thing I usually address, because I think it's important, is to address the financial situation. I think what's one of the things that can prevent self-esteem and empowerment is the fact that we're stuck in a bad financial situation. So our mind is so focused on how do I have to worry about the financial things and paying for this and that. You can't be empowered if you're worried about, how you're going to pay the next month rent. So the first thing I say is make your financial situation okay. And there's lots of ways you can do this. I mean, the first thing is really to look at how you spend your money and where you could spend differently. I think in Switzerland, obviously, it's a country that's quite expensive. So you need to review how you deal, what's your relationship to money and finance. And once you have that cleared, you can have a lifestyle that's actually suited with your career goal or your career ideal. So for example, if you say, I want to leave, have my own independent consultancy and be able to live off of that, you will have to go through a stage of realigning maybe how you spend your money, because you won't have the Swiss salary given by a corporate company, 10, 20,000 Swiss francs a month. So once you have that settled, and again, it's lined up with your goal, once you have that settled, then everything will be much easier for you. The second thing is to give yourself some realistic goals. I see too many people who say, well, I want to do this extremely amazing, world-changing type of thing. The first thing is really to address what's the short-term goal, and then you would have a medium-term goal and a long-term goal, but it's step by step. So if you go from a corporate job and you say, I want to become independent, or I want to switch careers completely, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a transition or change. So you're going to have to give yourself some slack where you say, okay, maybe in 6 months it's getting my financial situation in order, and maybe in 12 months I will have some interviews to get the new job. And that's realistic. You're giving yourself 6 months, a year to make the transition, not a month. So that's going to help also psychologically, so that you don't have the pressure. Because what I find is that either people wait for too long and then they come to me and say, I want to change tomorrow, and that's not possible. Or they're not active enough, they're not an actor of their own life. So you need to be ready to make the efforts, but also have realistic goals, so that you can say, okay, slowly this is the transition I want. Today let's say you're an accountant. Today I'm an accountant, I'm not happy in my situation, I hate my company, and in 6 months I want to be in a situation where I work for this company doing this kind of work. So there's going to be steps in between. I need to rebrand my profile, I need to work on my limiting beliefs and my empowerment, and in 6 months the idea is that I'm a bit closer to my goal. So that's the idea, is that it's a transition and it's step by step, and you need to make some changes also to attract different employers, because in a career change, obviously you're going to address different employers, the skills that they're going to look for. You're going to have to pull different skills to sell to an employer. So it's not going to be, okay, I just change a few words on my resume and send it to the company tomorrow. That's not going to work. There's personal change that needs to happen. You need to be lined up with your goals. You need to be credible. So it's a lot of things that will make it possible for you. So just a little note on that, because I think people get a bit confused on how you can really target what you're looking for. The other thing I tend to use as an image, because I think people get stuck, again, they're not making the changes that they really want because of multiple reasons. So the phrase I like to use is, look at what's the worst case scenario that can happen. So if right now you're in a situation where you say, I'm at the point, and I usually tell people not to leave a job until their project is really concrete and they have leads, serious leads, or even a job offer. Especially after a certain age, it becomes more difficult, but still possible. But I try to avoid that people are in dire straits, basically. But there's always the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario that could happen is that you're not going to die from it, you're not going to be in the streets. So it's always to put some, mild scenario there. People are afraid most of the time for the wrong reasons. And it's usually fears based on what I addressed earlier, what we have in our head since the childhood, limiting beliefs. But in the end, we're frustrated because we're not doing what we really want. So to avoid that, it's, okay, how do I think differently? give myself the power, and that could be financial, mental, to achieve my goal. So I'm willing to invest in myself to get who I want to be. And again, it's not going to be a quick overnight change, but I'm going to give myself 100% chances to make it happen. And if you give yourself really 100% chance, meaning you're not letting the negative thoughts and limiting beliefs take the power, technically, there's no reason why it shouldn't work. Other people do it all around you. And I've heard sometimes women in my surrounding circles say, well, you know, this woman, she had the guts, you know, she launched her own business, or she found this job. Wow, you know, I don't know how she did this. And, you know, I have the knowledge, but I don't think I could do it. And it's usually you limit yourself. Why did it happen to this other person, but it can't happen to you? There's no reason, really, objectively. So it's really believing in what you can achieve. The other advice I give usually is to do something for yourself every week. That's advice I received from a leader when I was in my 20s. That's what she told me when I said, what do you do to keep yourself happy and motivated in your job? She had a very senior job, obviously. She said, I do something for myself every week, and that's something I keep applying today. It really makes a difference because it reinforces the self-empowerment. If you do something for yourself, and I mean outside of your family situation, if you do something for yourself every week, you'll feel empowered because you feel like you have the power on your agenda. And that's another thing where we get sometimes pushed is with the agenda, and that actually lowers the self-esteem and the empowerment, because when we're stuck in a situation where we can't manage our own agenda, typically it causes stress and worry, and you're not feeling very good. When you make the decision on what you want to put in your agenda, if it's 1 hour doing yoga or, I don't know, reading or what have you, you feel already better because you've chosen how you want to spend this hour. So I really recommend to do something for yourself. The other thing I recommend is to start making decisions. If you're not doing that right now, start making decisions every day. And it could be on small things, you know, what kind of, I don't know, what kind of holidays. So you're going to say, well, I need to talk about it with partner or what have you. Yes, on the main things, probably you do, but there's lots of different things where women are still not making decisions. And I think it also shows, it goes again with your self-reinforcement that you're credible if you're trying to show around in your family that you're capable of finding a new job. The fact that you start making small decisions will reinforce this message to your surrounding family, partners, etc. By just making decisions on small things, where you go out to lunch, how you're going to spend your weekend, the type of activities for the children. So I think women were still not, and that's one thing I've observed when I was working in corporations, the difference between maybe how men or women would act. I think women were still a little bit more scared to make decisions. So we need, again, this validation from our senior executives or, you know, people around us. And actually, they don't enjoy that much because they think, oh, okay, this employee is going to ask me again, and I really don't have the time. I've noticed when I started making my own decisions, people were very happy. My boss was the first one because that liberated his time. So if he has someone that works for him making their own decisions, that's time for them that they can use doing other things. So the best thing I did when I was working in a company structure was to actually bring self-empowerment to everybody, including the management team. Because then if they make their own decision and they run their own show, that's time liberated for their senior executives, and they're quite happy not to have to make the smaller decisions within teams. So it's really going to be a huge card that you can play, but you have to start with yourself. You can't help other people make their own decisions if you're not there yet. So try practicing that every day, you know, and after a while you say, okay, you know, now I make decisions faster and faster, and that means I can apply that also in my career. So make decisions. And the last one, which is repetitive of what I was saying earlier, invest in your career. Invest in yourself. So invest in yourself first by feeling good about what you want to look like, what you want to be seen as, also as a human perspective. And then don't hesitate to invest. You know, if you want to change careers, for example, for your own happiness, start testing a little bit with online free courses, and then when you're ready and you say, this is what I want, then you should invest in that and say, okay, now I want to put some funds aside so I can start, building my project and being successful in what I want to do. So that's the last thing about how you reinforce self-empowerment, how you develop it and reinforce it. That's going to be important. So before I move on the last section, which is really about how to find opportunities or, whether it's jobs, opportunities in general, do you have any questions? I don't see any questions. I have one actually that you may wonder. The Swiss market is different than where I used to work. What type of jobs should I go for? So that's a positioning question. Let's say you've done a career in your country where you're from, and now you're in Switzerland, you have no clue what to do. So the first thing would be to do a career assessment and to find out what are your strengths in general, where are you good at, and then see what type of jobs are available in Switzerland that you could tackle, basically. That would be my idea on that one. I would advise a career assessment because it's going to be hard just off the bat to say, okay, this is what I should target. You could do it, but you probably could be disappointed because you haven't tested yet. So if you say, oh, well, I think it's hiring, there's hiring going on for admin assistants, and you go into admin assistant work, you may realize, wow, you know what, I don't think I like it. I should have thought about that a little bit earlier. So I always suggest to do the career assessment test, and that's part of my program, is that I have people test with different people, interview people, so that they can get the best self-reinforcement where they say it's the right path for me, rather than to jump too quickly and then regret it. And you have to think about that also because in Switzerland, it's very hard to change too much. So if you do one career change already, it's hard to sell and you really have to tackle it. But if you're going to change regularly, your CV is going to be quite disruptive for a lot of recruiters, and it's going to be hard for them to see your value. So that's why I always say, take the time, do the career assessment, test it with people, test it with the career you're trying to target. If you really convince 110%, then you make the change and you find a job there. Another question which might be of interest to you is, okay, I'm interested now in freelancing, consulting. However, I know from a financial perspective, it may not be the best choice. So that's a tough one, and I see this problem, I think, in general, is sometimes you may like something, or you might find that it's the right path for you, but financial reasons are stopping you. You need the dual income or what have you. That goes back to what I was saying earlier, to get the finances in order first. And I think that applies across the board, whether you're a man or a woman. It's you need to be in a situation where you feel that you can spend money in launching a freelance activity, because you may not get funding immediately. So that's a family situation. That's really to see, maybe for a while you can live on one salary, or what I typically advise, and I think that's just the basic, is maybe to work for a while in something that may not be your 100% target, but maybe in an interim job. And then you put some money aside to have a bit of funding to start the business. Now, the good news is that you can start with very little income. You can start, a website could be even a free website. Business cards now you can get cheap. So really it doesn't cost what it used to cost to start a freelance activity. It really depends on what kind of activity, do you already have people that would purchase from you? So I give some tips on that as well in my career consulting sessions, to start really with little. And it's actually good for you to see if you have a market as well, to not invest too much at the beginning. See if you get a bit of clients coming through your doors. And if that starts to pop up, that's a good sign. And then you can invest a bit more. So technically, it shouldn't cost you too much money to start a business. But out of security, I always say, try to build a bit of bundle aside, so that if you have months where you have 0 clients or it's not working the way you want, you're not in dire straits. So that's my advice. And the last question that might be on your minds right now is, what type of roles are suitable for part-time flexible hours? So in Switzerland, you notice it's not always easy to find part-time work, and that would be probably ideal for a lot of people. Again, it's not just women. Sometimes you just want to work part-time. I think not many positions allow that in general, especially corporate positions, because the market is getting tough. There's a big stress right now to deliver good service, to make money, obviously. So that goes with people that are actually giving 100% of their time. And even if you're working 45 hours a week, most managers or people with jobs with responsibilities work more than that. They end up replying to emails in the evenings or sometimes even on the weekends. That's company policy there. I don't want to say something that's wrong there, but really, I think as long as you have an important job, it's going to come with responsibility, and therefore you lose a little bit of that free time. So that's something just people need to be aware of, because when you hear, if you want to get a really big job and probably find that part-time is going to be pretty much impossible. So you have to be realistic about that. Freedom, money, and responsibility don't really work hand in hand, unless maybe you have a specific freelance business you can settle. But most of the time, you need to invest a lot of time to grow something and to really make a difference. So employers will not make a lot of jobs part-time. You can find maybe admin work, reception work, maybe in education or in public sector. There might be some more part-time jobs, or in social work, but most of the time it's full-time. So now it actually gives me the perfect transition. I wanted to talk about what kind of markets are important in Switzerland, or growth markets where you can find work. So basically there's the markets recruiting is basically there's three different things. So 21% is industry. That's where the jobs are. 17% are retail and 11% are health. So here you've got your top three markets recruiting. So if you don't fit in these three categories, probably you're already in a place where you have to find a little bit outside of the box. In terms of professions, the first 5 professions in the Romandie, so I call that the whole Lake Geneva, from Geneva up to Canton, Vaud, etc. The 5 professions, basically the first one is the skills craftsman. That's what the Swiss are really keen to find, really good craftsmen. So it could be people that do plumbing or fixing floors, whatever, construction, all that kind of work. Number 2 is managing directors, or people quite senior in management. Number 3, technicians, good technicians are always sought after. Number 4, finance, banking people. Again, I would say finance, banking, but very specialist skills. Are always wanted in Switzerland. You have banking is quite big, and finance in general, and insurance, I would say, is quite a big recruiter in Switzerland. And finally, you'll be surprised, the 5th top most wanted kind of profession, drivers. So it's nothing, it's not what I would call the management type of positions. They are looking for senior leaders or executive leaders, but in terms of what I call the middle officer, manager, project manager, and so forth, which is probably where most people that I meet or encounter are looking for, you will see that it's not in the top 5. So the reason why I wanted to give you this information is to show you that it's not just you. It's not just you not finding a job. It's also the market. When you find what kind of jobs are recruiting and what kind of sectors, you will see that maybe that's also a reason why, if you were looking, you're not finding. You see that maybe it's not suitable with what you do. So these professions are not exactly the expat type of positions, maybe for managing directors or finance. But for the other ones, it's mostly people that don't necessarily have a huge amount of education that are actually wanted. So what the Swiss are wanting in terms of qualifications and what the expats are bringing in, also there might be a gap there as well. So that's why, it's kind of to put things in perspective, that you have some good skills and you will find a job, but just to understand that maybe the market is not 100% fit for an expat in Switzerland. So I thought that was interesting. That's why I mentioned it, to put things a little bit in perspective. The other thing is that Switzerland right now is trying also to find the place within Europe with a strong Swiss francs, with, companies are trying to be competitive. I mean, you have a lot of things that are done now in other countries, cheap. So Switzerland is also trying to find how they stay competitive and how they stay in business. So you probably saw in the press and media that companies have laid off. You know, there's a big competitive issue, I think, where companies need to find their positioning. And there's also immigration policies that were voted a year back, I believe, or 2 years ago, about the number of permits and basically the policy on immigration in general. And that's still floating within the air right now and not decided upon, meaning that it's hard for companies to figure out, you know, what's going to be the next step in terms of recruitment. So all that is outside of your control, and that's why I'm saying sometimes you have to understand that so that you can position yourself better. So now I wanted to give you a few leads. So what do you do concretely to improve your chances? So the first one is to take responsibility of your choices. That's going to be very important. So if you want a job that's very important for you, that's your priority, then you should go for it and give yourself 100% chances. If, however, you see that maybe it's not worth at the moment for you to actually pursue that, that's fine too, but you just need to understand where you stand. The second thing is to become more active online. I've noticed a lot of people are still not using the tools online for themselves. There's lots that you can do with Facebook, with LinkedIn, and I'm not talking about personal stuff because that's not going to help you obviously in your job search. But it's really trying to use LinkedIn to the next level, trying to create groups and become more active so that you can bring some light to your profile. So in 2016, now the way to look for a job, and I've said this before in my other communication, is not to actually send a resume and keep the fingers crossed and hope that it works. It's to actually build up your branding. So you need to become someone of credibility, and you need to work on all these aspects I've talked about in the webinar to build that credibility so that you're recognized on the Swiss market as being a specific expert in an area to be recruited. So that takes time. That's why I'm saying it takes time. If you realize today I want to become a marketing specialist, there's probably going to be a lot of building up of your profile to get there. And even if you were doing that in another country or in another company some years before, things move very fast. So we're in 2016 now. Every day there's a new app that's created. Marketing, how you do marketing is evolving every day with different manners and tools that you use. So you're going to need to grasp that really well. And the reason why I'm saying this is because sometimes if you've been away from the workplace for whatever reason, you lose that the touch with reality, with what's going on now, what employers are looking for, what kind of skills. So that's my job. I'm trying to bring the two worlds together between employers who are looking for skills and people who are searching. It's trying to get the two worlds to communicate and to say, you know, I'm an expert in this field and I need to find a job. Well, how do you go about that? What are you bringing to an organization is always my question. So you need to become more active, definitely online, spend more time, investing more time in building up your profile so that you can get a chance to be seen in the wave of people looking for work. The other thing I've recommended before is to really read what's going on also in Switzerland. I've given you a few areas there with what kind of fields are recruiting in Switzerland to give you an idea about the job market. And that's something you need to also inquire for yourself before you look for a job. It's actually understanding the market, understanding the culture. That's going to create opportunities around you as well if you understand the market and what employers want. And you can find that out by reading a lot of articles, meeting a lot of people as much as you can to get feedback. That's going to help you. Just coming to the country and sending an application somewhere is not enough. So you need to understand a little bit more the context. I talk about that in my videos on my career planning tool, about the context, because depending again on the culture, sometimes you could go to a country and just send your resume. And, you know, I'm thinking about countries like the UK or the US where maybe knowing the context is not as important. You can just send a resume and people will call you in. In Geneva, it's very much, the culture is very local. So everything is very localized, even between cantons. So if you're in Canton Vaud or Geneva, it's still very different. It's almost like you're going from one country to another within the French-speaking part of Switzerland. So you need to understand the country very well so that you understand how you fit in that image. So that's why I mentioned that. You have to register on as many platforms as you can so that you can get automated links sent to you, invitations to events. That's something also I developed quite a bit in my practice, is to understand what kind of events are going to bring you value in Switzerland. Where should you go? Where should you be seen? So that you can build up, again, same thing, build up your profile, be seen. We're moving really much, very much towards a world where you have to be seen. And that's why when you watch, if you spend a bit of time on Facebook, you realize Facebook Live is popping out. If you understand a little bit media, Snapchat, all these different tools now that are really 21st century tools that some of you may still be very worried about or not know much about. We're really moving towards a digital world, and the people that will take the next train are people that are digital friendly or digital aware, whatever you want to call it. So you need to grasp that train. Otherwise, there will be the people that grasp the train and people that don't. And people that don't won't be the first choice in an interview or in a choice, a selection process. So you need to be with the people that understand technology. You don't have to be an expert, but you need to understand how technology works, how it works for you. That's the first thing with your profile, and how you can make it work for a company. So if you can do that, you have an edge. And the last advice I want to give, because I think it could help you, it's how do you start a passive income business? So I can give you a few ideas, basically. You can find them also on YouTube, on the web. It's how do you start maybe an activity where you could be more independent, not have to look for a job, actually, maybe even at the beginning whilst you're looking. So there's lots of things that you can do right now. Obviously, you can start your own e-shop where you sell your own creations. For example, I know a lot of women like to create, whether it be jewelry but then a lot of people are doing that as well. So you need to find what's your value and how do you go about it, etc., etc. But basically, there's lots of activities that you could start very cheap that could provide you that passive income. So that's actually, I think, an area of interest. And also, there's lots of ways now that you can sell online, etc. That could be that solution between the employment status and the non-employed status. So there's solutions maybe in between that would provide you with something. Especially if you can't get to the permanent full-time employment for multiple reasons, because as I said, permanent employment or full-time employment also will make it that you have less time maybe with your family, you have more pressure, more responsibilities. So it's not always the ideal situation anyways. I mean, it is ideal from a financial perspective, but may not fit everybody perfectly. So in between now, there's a bunch of solutions that are developing under our eyes, and it's really the digital world, and it's how you master that, or how you could create opportunities for yourself. It's just a resource. It doesn't mean it's right for you, but I think I mentioned it because I don't know if everybody has heard about this whole passive income business. You hear that if you're in the startup type of environment, but for most people, it's still a foreign word. What's a passive income business? So it's really using the web basically to start making a passive income. So it means it's not a full-time salary, but it's money that you can have that's a plus to your family. So it's helping the family, and it's things that you can do that you really enjoy as well. So you can do this via a bunch of things. Again, I will give you some ideas. I will send you a link of a video that actually, it's on my Facebook page, but ideas of passive income business. And I think that should really be a resource.